What's up again, guys? Brian here at 3TR, and I got my first official game review for the PlayStation 4 system, and it is the launch title, simply called Killzone Shadowfall. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the Killzone franchise storyline, this game takes place 30 years after the events of Killzone 3, in which Helgen was completely destroyed due to the incidents that took place in Killzone 3, and since then, the Vector VSA agency has actually allowed the Helghast to actually come back to Vector, and they've actually cut off a large section of one of their bigger cities and have allowed the Helgen to live on the opposite side. Now, dividing the Helghast with the Vector humans is this giant wall, which is kind of reminiscent of the Berlin Wall that, we all know from human history. But as we all know, tensions are starting to arise between both factions, and you play as the character known as Shadow Marshal Lucas Keller. And it's up for you to venture to the other side of the wall, on the Helgen side, figure out exactly what they're planning to see if they're up to some type of ultimate weapon or secret attack. Find it, stop the threat, and prevent another impending war, which is unquestionably going to devastate the planet once more. Now, I have to state that in terms of overall narrative, Killzone Shadowfall is actually quite solid. They go over a lot of really philosophical ideologies about what it means to be a soldier, what it means to be a person who has to now live with these people who not only attacked your planet, but you went to their planet and completely devastated. And so you can tell that the Helghast have a, there's some bad blood under the bridge, and they're not happy to be living next door to the people who kind of almost wiped out their race. They definitely spend a lot of time talking about that. There's definitely a lot of scenes where you actually get to see on the other side of the Helgen wall. You actually get to see really the citizens. You can see that, yeah, not the Helghast, they're not all bad people. Some of them are suffering in the poverty, and you can actually see that another impending war would be devastating for these people, and that really does, pull at your heartstrings or emotion strings at points. And I like the fact that your character, Lucas Keller, actually talks, and so you actually do feel like a character. You actually get to see his character development. I mean, by the beginning of the game, he suffers this terrible event with his father, which shapes him into the man he is today, and then over the next couple of missions over the course of this game, you'll actually see him develop more and change his point of view, which is something I really enjoyed. However, I'm going to state this right now. I really hate the ending. And in a whole, the ending sort of ruined the entire storyline. I'm not going to say what it was, but I'm just going to say it in one quick quote. I hate cutscene bullets. That's all I want to say on the matter. If you want to know what I'm talking about, feel free to spoil it because it will piss you off, especially if you're really getting into this story like I was. Now, going into the gameplay, if you've played the other Killzone games, it plays very similar. The controls are about the same. It's not quite as sharp as, say, first-person shooter games like Battlefield or Call of Duty, but it has much more of a rugged feel to it, which gives it a much more realistic feeling to it. The weapons are very vast and powerful, although I would like to state that I was actually more fond with playing with the Helghast weapons because they all have two secondary functions. One, a standard machine gun fire, then others have like a shotgun or a grenade launcher or a flamethrower, or, well, maybe not a flamethrower. I wish they had a flamethrower as they did in the other games, but yeah, they all have two different functions, and they're all very vastly unique and can be used different ways. However, the main gameplay element that they add in this game, which is essential to learn how to use, is your little AI buddy known as Owl. Now, Owl is pretty much like your Swiss Army knife buddy that sticks with you throughout most of the game. And he has four basic functions that you actually control with your touchpad, depending on which direction you move. You can either tell him to engage normal enemies, to put up a shield in front of you to protect you from enemy fire. You could tell him to repel to lower levels, or you could actually tell him to actually cause an EMP wave, which will then actually disarm your enemy's electronic gear or even gadgets, which can be very helpful, especially in those much difficult parts of levels. Something that I also have to talk about is the overall look of the game. The look of the game is simply magnificent. It is definitely a next-gen system, although part of me does speculate to see if what this would have looked like on the PlayStation 3, but that's beside the point. But what really, really makes this game different from its predecessors is the level design. Whoever created these levels was a genius, because they're not quite as linear as most first-person shooter games. They're actually quite vast, and they're more reminiscent of like a game like Crysis, as in there's really not just one way of getting from this side of the map to the others. There are multiple paths and multiple directions that you can go in order to really strategize how you want to get from this side of the map to the other, because there are going to be multiple times where you will have to use this to your advantage, because there are certain paths that are there's too much heat to want to just push through like a tank and kill everything. Sometimes it's better to take the subtle way. Now, something I would also like to talk about is an option that they add to the Dual Shock 4 controller is the mic. Now, over the course of the game, you'll actually find audio tapes which you can actually press in order to really find out what happened at this instant before you got there. And what I really like is it actually plays the audio tape on your controller, and so it's much more immersive, and was something I had never experienced before. Mostly, when you hear an audio tape, they'll usually like play from the screen or from my surround system, but to have it really up close to me, like I'm actually in the game listening to it, was pretty remarkable. Now, I'm going to talk about multiplayer for the first time because I just don't have a choice. Multiplayer is pretty well built. It has basically all your standard gameplay modes, you know, deathmatch, capture the flag, objectives, holding off an enemy, horde mode, I think they might be adding. And although there aren't as many character classes that you can choose from, the fact that there are so much customizable really doesn't feel like a big of an issue. There's certain upgrades that you can add, there's certain medals that you can earn from doing certain achievements, and there's a great selection of trophies. In a whole, Killzone Shadowfall, in my opinion, is a solid game for a launch title for the PlayStation 4. However, in terms of overall story base, it really lacks any sort of real narrative. And for the first time, for me at least, I was actually enjoying playing the game rather than actually listening to the story. And that's something I'm not too used to, but it feels very refreshing to me. I don't consider it to be the best Killzone in the franchise, but it's definitely in like the better half. So I would definitely put it above something like Killzone 3 or Killzone 1, but I don't think it's as good as 2 in my opinion. Plus, the color scheme, I think, was vastly unique and not quite as plain as it was in the PlayStation games. Which is why I'm more than happy to give Killzone Shadowfall an 8 out of 10. If you had to choose between Knack or Killzone to buy as your first exclusive PlayStation 4 launch title, I would pick Killzone, because I guess for most people, it's a great starting off point for this great franchise. And if you like this game review, feel free to like, comment down below, and please subscribe to track for me my future movie and video game reviews. You can also press one of the links in the description down below to follow me on Twitter or friend me on Facebook, and I will be sure to follow you and friend you back. And like always, thanks to you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you next time.